Nobody taught you this in school, and that wasn't an accident. There are four specific types of assets that wealthy people have been quietly accumulating for generations. Not stocks, not your 401k, not your primary home. Four specific categories of ownership that produce cash flow, compound wealth, and protect against inflation while you are being taught to show up, work hard, get a paycheck, and save whatever's left over. I've been talking about this for 30 years. When Rich Dad, Poor Dad came out in 1997, people called me a fraud. They said I was misleading the public. Financial advisors wrote articles about how dangerous my ideas were. And then the 2008 crash happened, and the 2020 crash happened, and inflation hit the hardest it had in 4 decades. And suddenly the things I'd been saying for 30 years didn't sound so dangerous anymore. Here's what I know for certain. The wealthy in this country are not wealthy because they work harder than you. They are wealthy because they own different things than you. They own assets you were never told existed. And the gap between what they own and what most people own is the gap between financial freedom and financial slavery. Today, I'm going to close that gap. I'm going to name the four assets. I'm going to tell you what they are, why they work, and how ordinary people can start acquiring them. Pay attention. This is a conversation nobody had with you when it's mattered most. I was 37 years old and I had almost nothing. My nylon and Velcro wallet business had collapsed. I had walked away from a venture I'd poured years of my life into, carrying debt I didn't know how to service, and a reputation I wasn't sure I could rebuild. Sharon and I were in a difficult place, not just financially, the kind of difficult that tests everything about who you think you are and what you believe is possible for your life. I remember sitting in a small apartment, looking at a yellow legal pad where I'd written down every asset I owned. The list was embarrassingly short: a little cash, a beat-up car, some personal property worth almost nothing on the open market. That was it. After years of working, hustling, and thinking I was building something, I owned almost nothing that produced income while I slept. It was one of the lowest moments of my life, but it was also the moment that forced me back to the most important lessons I had ever received. I called Rich Dad. I drove to his office in Hawaii. I sat across from him feeling like a failure, and instead of sympathy, he gave me something more valuable. He gave me clarity. He pushed a piece of paper across the desk. He said, "Robert, write down what you own." I wrote my pitiful little list. He looked at it. He said, "Now write down what produces income while you sleep." I stared at the paper. I couldn't write a single thing. He nodded slowly. He said, "That is your problem, and it is also your answer. You have been building skills and building businesses, but you have not been building the right assets. You have been working in the E and S quadrant. You need to start moving to the B and I quadrant. And to do that, you need to understand what the four core assets actually are and why the rich never stop acquiring them." That conversation was a turning point, not just intellectually. I'd heard Rich Dad talk about assets and liabilities for years, but at 37, sitting across from him with almost nothing to show for my efforts, it hit me differently. It landed in a place that pure theory never reaches. It landed in the place where real change happens. Over the following decade, I rebuilt. And this time I rebuilt around the four assets Rich Dad described that afternoon in his office. By the time I was in my late 40s, Sharon and I were financially free. Not rich in the flashy sense, genuinely free. Income coming in from assets every month, whether I worked or not. That is what I want for you. And it starts with knowing what to own. Let me tell you the story of two people, and I want you to decide which one is you. Person A goes to school, gets good grades, gets a degree, lands a job with a salary and benefits, works hard, gets promoted, earns more over time, saves diligently in a 401k, pays out their mortgage over 30 years, retires at 65, and lives on Social Security plus whatever the market left them. Person B goes to school too, gets a job, but somewhere along the way, they get a different kind of education, financial education. They start acquiring assets while they still have a paycheck by 40. A portion of their monthly income comes from those assets. By 50, that portion is significant. So by the time they choose to stop working, the assets are producing more than their salary ever did. Person A did everything they were told. Person B did something they were never told. The system, schools, banks, government, and most of the financial services industry is designed to produce person A not because of a conspiracy, but because person A is useful to the system. Person A pays taxes on every dollar before they see it. Person A keeps their money inside financial institutions where it can be managed and monetized by those institutions. Person A consumes products and services. Person A is an excellent participant in the economy. The problem is that being an excellent participant is not the same as being financially free. Here's what schools never teach: the difference between earned income and passive income. Earned income is what you get from working. It is the most heavily taxed income there is. Passive income is what you get from assets, and the tax treatment is dramatically more favorable. The rich structure their financial lives to produce primarily passive income. The middle class produces almost exclusively earned income. That single difference in the source of the income, not the amount, is worth tens of thousands of dollars every year in reduced taxes alone. And here's what your financial advisor almost certainly hasn't told you. The four assets I'm about to describe are the ones the wealthy have been holding for generations. They are not secret in the sense that they're hidden. They're just not part of the conversation that most financial professionals are incentivized to have with you, because the system profits more from your participation in its products than from your ownership of real assets. Rich Dad described four core asset categories, and he made me understand each one not as a product to buy, but as a machine that produces cash flow, builds equity, and compounds wealth over time without requiring your daily labor. Let me walk you through each one. Asset number one, real estate. This is the foundational asset of almost every wealthy family in America, not the home you live in. I need to say that clearly again because it matters. Your primary residence is a liability. It takes money out of your pocket every month. I'm talking about income-producing real estate, rental properties, multifamily units, commercial spaces, real estate investment trusts, properties where other people's monthly payments fund your ownership. What makes real estate uniquely powerful is a combination of forces working in your favor simultaneously. Leverage: the bank lends you most of the purchase price. Cash flow: the rent covers your costs and leaves a surplus. Appreciation: the property grows in value over time. Tax advantages: depreciation, 1,031 exchanges, deductible expenses, and amortization. Every mortgage payment made by your tenant builds your equity. No other asset class offers all five of these simultaneously, and at this scale. Rich Dad always said, real estate is where ordinary people become wealthy because the rules are written to reward ownership. Asset number two, business ownership. Not a job, not freelancing, not being self-employed where you are still trading time for money. Business ownership in the true sense, a system, a structure that operates and produces income independently of your daily presence. Rich Dad's cash flow quadrant places business owners on the right side. The B quadrant, and the difference between the B quadrant and the E or S quadrant is fundamental. On the left side, you stop earning the moment you stop working. On the right side, you build something that works for you: employees, systems, intellectual property, brand value, recurring revenue streams that continue when you're not in the room. The tax code is dramatically more favorable to business owners than to employees. Business owners can deduct legitimate expenses before paying taxes. They can structure compensation intelligently. They have access to retirement vehicles with far higher limits than a standard 401k. The tax advantages alone make business ownership one of the most powerful financial positions available. And the cash flow potential is unlimited in ways that a salary never is. Asset number three, paper assets, but not the ones you're thinking of. Most people, when they think about investing, think mutual funds, index funds, their company 401k. These are paper assets. And in general, I am not against paper assets, with an important clarification. There is a significant difference between paper assets that produce income and paper assets that simply fluctuate in value. Dividend-paying stocks produce income, REITs produce income, certain types of notes and bonds produce income. These are paper assets that behave more like income machines than speculative positions. The rich focus on income-producing paper assets. They focus on cash flow, not just capital appreciation. My poor dad put money in savings and mutual funds and hoped they grew. Rich dad invested in paper assets that paid him regularly. One was betting on the market, the other was building income. I also want to be clear about where precious metals fit. Gold and silver are wealth preservation assets, God's money, as I call them. They protect against currency debasement. They are not primarily cash flow assets, but they are essential holdings for anyone serious about protecting what they build. Asset number 4, intellectual property. This is the one that most people have genuinely never considered, and it may be the most democratized asset of our time. Intellectual property is any creation of the mind that can be legally owned and that produces ongoing income from that ownership. Books, music, patents, trademarks, brand licenses, online courses, software, proprietary systems. When I wrote Rich Dad, Poor Dad in 1997, I created an asset. Every time someone buys that book today, royalties come in. I didn't write it again. The asset works. I know what you're thinking, Robert. I'm not a writer or an inventor. This doesn't apply to me. But you have knowledge, you have skills, you have experiences that other people would pay to learn from. The internet has made it possible for ordinary people to create courses, systems, and content that produce ongoing income at a scale that would have been impossible 20 years ago. Intellectual property is the one asset where your upfront investment is mostly time and knowledge, not capital. And once it's created and protected, it can produce income indefinitely. 4 assets: real estate, business ownership, income-producing paper assets, intellectual property. The rich own all 4. Most people own none of them. That is a gap, and it's not inevitable. Let me give you 3 steps: practical, sequential, honest. This is what I would do if I were starting over today. Step 1, choose one asset category and get completely serious about it. Not all 4. 1, the biggest mistake most people make when they finally understand the asset framework is trying to do everything at once. They read about real estate, then get distracted by a business opportunity, then start looking at dividend stocks, then consider creating a course. They start 5 things and finish none. They're learning everything and owning nothing. Choose the one asset class that fits your current situation, your knowledge base, your capital availability, your time, your interest. If you have some savings and your market has accessible rental properties, go deep on real estate. If you have a skill or expertise that others need, go deep on building a business or creating intellectual property. If your capital is limited but consistent, learn dividend investing. Depth in one beats breadth across 5. Every time, master one quadrant before you expand to the next. Step 2, find someone who already owns what you want to own and learn from them directly. Not YouTube alone, not books alone, though books are essential. Find a real human being who has actually done what you want to do in the real world with real money and made real mistakes. Offer them something in exchange for their time. Help them with their business, assist with their properties, work for less than you're worth in exchange for proximity to knowledge worth more than money. Rich Dad gave me something no book could fully replicate: real conversations about real deals with real outcomes. When I sat across from him and he walked me through why a particular property deal worked or didn't work, I learned things that no course teaches. The nuance, the feel of a good deal versus a bad one. The instincts that only come from watching someone experience make decisions in real time. Find your rich dad. They exist in your community. They're in real estate investor groups, entrepreneur forums, business networks. Approach them with genuine humility and something of value to offer. That relationship will be worth more than any degree you could buy. The mentor who has done it beats the professor who only teaches it. Step 3, build your asset column before you upgrade your lifestyle. This is a discipline test, and most people fail it, not because they're weak, but because the culture constantly pressures you to spend what you earn on visible markers of success. Bigger house, newer car, more expensive vacations, nicer clothes. I'm not telling you to live like a monk. I'm telling you to consciously delay lifestyle upgrades until your asset column is producing enough income to fund them. Rich Dad had a rule I've lived by my entire adult life. Never increase your lifestyle until your passive income can support it. Every raise, every bonus, every windfall, the first allocation goes to acquiring or building assets. not to upgrading consumption. This discipline, applied over 5 to 10 years, is what separates the person who works forever from the person who builds freedom. It is not glamorous. It does not photograph well for social media, but the result, genuine financial independence sustained by assets that outlast your working years, is worth every sacrifice along the way. Build the asset first. Let the asset fund the lifestyle. Here's the conversation I want to have with the part of you that's still resistant, the part that listened to everything I just said and is still thinking, that's not for me. I'm too old. I'm too far behind. I don't have enough capital. I don't have the right education or background or connections. That voice is your poor dad talking. And I say that not to insult you, but because I recognize it. I heard that voice in my own head at 37, sitting across from Rich Dad with an empty asset column and a pile of debt. That voice is real, and it is almost always wrong. Here's what I want to challenge directly: the belief that security comes from a job. A job is someone else's decision about your financial life. Your employer decides what you're worth. They decide whether your position still exists next quarter. They decide when the restructuring happens and which roles are eliminated. You are a variable cost on someone else's balance sheet. That is not security. That is controlled dependency dressed up as stability. The belief that working hard is enough. Working hard is necessary. I have worked hard every day of my adult life, but working hard for a paycheck without simultaneously building assets is running on a treadmill. You stay in shape, but you don't get anywhere. The hour you stop running, you stop moving. Rich people work hard too, but they work hard building things they own, not things they're hired to maintain. The belief that you need money to start. Some of the most valuable assets I've described today require almost no capital to begin. Intellectual property requires knowledge and time. Business building in the early stages often requires creativity more than cash. Real estate can be entered with creative financing structures that many people don't know exist. The belief that you need money to make money is a middle-class myth that keeps people waiting for conditions that never arrive. Financial education is available to anyone willing to seek it. The assets are available to anyone willing to learn how to acquire them. The only thing that is genuinely required, that cannot be borrowed, leveraged, or structured away, is a decision to stop accepting the financial story you've been handed and to start writing a different one. I want to talk about the moment we're in right now, because it matters enormously to the decisions you make in the next 12 months. We are living through one of the most significant wealth transfers in modern history. And wealth transfers don't happen because money disappears. They happen because money moves from people who don't understand what's happening to people who do, from people holding the wrong things to people holding the right things. Here's the conversation I want to have with the part of you that's still resistant, the part that listened to everything I just said and is still thinking, that's not for me. I'm too old. I'm too far behind. I don't have enough capital. I don't have the right education or background or connections. That voice is your poor dad talking. And I say that not to insult you, but because I recognize it. I heard that voice in my own head at 37, sitting across from Rich Dad with an empty asset column and a pile of debt. That voice is real, and it is almost always wrong. Here's what I want to challenge directly: the belief that security comes from a job. A job is someone else's decision about your financial life. Your employer decides what you're worth. They decide whether your position still exists next quarter. They decide when the restructuring happens and which roles are eliminated. You are a variable cost on someone else's balance sheet. That is not security. That is controlled dependency dressed up as stability. The belief that working hard is enough. Working hard is necessary. I have worked hard every day of my adult life, but working hard for a paycheck without simultaneously building assets is running on a treadmill. You stay in shape, but you don't get anywhere. The hour you stop running, you stop moving. Rich people work hard too, but they work hard building things they own, not things they're hired to maintain. The belief that you need money to start. Some of the most valuable assets I've described today require almost no capital to begin. Intellectual property requires knowledge and time. Business building in the early stages often requires creativity more than Cash real estate can be entered with creative financing structures that many people don't know exist. The belief that you need money to make money is a middle-class myth that keeps people waiting for conditions that never arrive. Financial education is available to anyone willing to seek it. The assets are available to anyone willing to learn how to acquire them. The only thing that is genuinely required that cannot be borrowed, leveraged, or structured away is a decision to stop accepting the financial story you've been handed and to start writing a different one. I want to talk about the moment we're in right now because it matters enormously to the decisions you make in the next 12 months. We are living through one of the most significant wealth transfers in modern history. And wealth transfers don't happen because money disappears. They happen because money moves from people who don't understand what's happening to people who do, from people holding the wrong things to people holding the right things. Inflation is not transient. The purchasing power of the dollar has been declining for decades, and the forces driving that decline, government spending, money creation, debt levels, are accelerating, not reversing. Every dollar sitting in a savings account is losing real value every single year. Cash is not a safe harbor in an inflationary environment. Cash is a slowly sinking ship. The middle class is being compressed from both directions. Cost of living is rising faster than wages for most workers. Asset prices, real estate, stocks, businesses are being driven up partly by inflation, partly by institutional accumulation. The people who own assets benefit from inflation. The people who don't are eroded by it. That divide is widening every year. Artificial intelligence is not a future concern. It is a present reality, restructuring labor markets in real time. The jobs that provided reliable middle-class incomes for previous generations are being automated, augmented, or eliminated at a pace that is accelerating. This is not reason to panic. It is reason to understand clearly that a strategy built entirely around selling your labor is more fragile than it has ever been. The four assets I've described today, real estate, business ownership, income-producing paper assets, intellectual property, are not affected by AI in the way that labor is. Ownership survives automation. Cash flow from assets does not disappear when machines do more of the work. In fact, as productivity increases through technology, the owners of that technology and the businesses using it tend to benefit. The window to position yourself correctly is not 10 years from now. It is now. Every year you wait is a year of compounding that cannot be recovered. A year of inflation eroding your savings. A year of the wealth gap widening further in one direction. The rich already know this. They have been acting on it for years. Now you know it too. The question is what you do next. Here's the truth I want you to carry out of this conversation and never forget. The gap between the wealthy and everyone else is not primarily a gap in income. It is a gap in what they own. The rich own assets, real estate, businesses, income-producing investment, intellectual property that produce cash flow and build equity independent of their daily labor. Most people own none of these things, not because they can't, but because nobody taught them that they should. You now know the four assets. You know why they work. You know how to begin acquiring them, even from wherever you are starting today. Here's the one thing I want you to do before you close this video. Take a piece of paper, a real piece of paper, not a note on your phone, and write 2 columns. Label the left one, things that take money from me every month. Label the right one, things that put money in my pocket every month. Fill in both columns honestly. Whatever's in that right column, that is your current asset base. Whatever's missing from it, that is your assignment. My rich dad always said, the richest people in the world build networks and assets. Everyone else looks for work. Stop looking for work. Start building ownership. If this conversation opened your eyes to how wealth is actually built, watch my next video. I'm going to walk you through how I analyze my very first real estate investment, the specific numbers, the specific questions I asked, and the specific reason it changed everything that came after it. Your financial story is not written yet. Start writing the right one today.